Hello, jewelry lover. My name is Bella Naiman, and I'm the founder of New York City Jewelry Week. Welcome to the virtual program for NYCJW25. The theme for this year's 8th edition of New York City Jewelry Week is Art Worn, focusing on artistry and jewelry and how artistic intent informs the creation of adornment. We hope that you enjoy the programs that we have carefully put together for you. While this program is not live, we do welcome your feedback. So enjoy the program. Don't forget to sign up for our mailing list. Follow us on Instagram at NYC Jewelry Week and hope to see you in person in 2026. Hello, my name is Bella Naiman. I'm the founder of New York City Jewelry Week. And today I'm pleased to be hosting a conversation, Coral Art Meets Science, with my guests, jewelry designer Katey Brunini and Dr. Laurent Cartier, Head of Special Initiatives at Swiss Gemological Institute, SSEF. Today's conversation was sparked by Dr. Laurent Cartier's peer-reviewed papers published in early June of 2025 in Coral Reefs 1 and Diversity 2, documenting his and his colleagues' discovery of a new species of coral via DNA testing. Katey, who launched her company in 1998 in California, has always focused on sustainability and sources materials from earth, sea, and space, as Kyle Roderick once wrote, which I love that quote. What attracted me to Katey's work and brought this conversation together is your recent Il Song collection, which we will talk about later. So welcome to you both. I would like to start today's conversation with a question to you, Laurent. Over centuries, coral has been seen as both a gemstone and a living organism. How has science reshaped our understanding of coral's role in culture, spirituality, and art?
I'm sorry, I've got a bit of a cough. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for the excellent question, Bella. So the picture that we see here on the slide is actually from a temple in northeastern Taiwan that I visited. And it's about a 1 meter high statue. And you can see that the head is made out of precious coral, as are the hands and other artifacts around it. And it really shows that coral symbolizes so much in different human cultures. Um, it's also been very important in Tibet. It's also been very important in West Africa, in the Mediterranean for many thousands of years. And so, as a material, it's really fascinated humans, not just for its color or because of the quality of the material and how we can work it, but scientists were long kind of confounded because they couldn't figure out, is coral a plant or an animal? And this took many, many centuries for people to realize that corals, it's essentially little animals, polyps, that are secreting, that are biomineralizing this calcium carbonate. And that is what is giving us this precious coral. So there's really long been a very, very strong fascination for the material. And in the Mediterranean region, also a lot of connotations because it's color, the Mediterranean color, coral color that can be orange or the darker red. Has links to kind of the color of blood or other colors. There's a lot of symbolism around that, and I'm sure that Katey is going to go into more detail on that. But it's interesting because it really is a material that was collected on all continents and widely traded. So that's what also makes it all the more interesting scientifically.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Katey, is there anything, would you like to add anything to that?
So the new collection called Il Sangue, it means blood in Italian or Latin root, vitality, lifeblood, the connection of the coral through the universal sea. And I think this photo exemplifies that crossing the Mediterranean into the Pacific, the trade of coral has been historically a exchange of ideas, diversity, artistic inspiration, spirituality, and opened a lot of doors to understanding different points of view.
Katey, so as a student at the University of California, you studied art history and history in general. And so, and I know that you have such a great love of antiquity and Asian culture. Is that sort of what inspired your journey and your fascination with coral?
So after university, I spent a lot of time living in Egypt and Sardinia and Sicily, and the fascination with the mixture of cultures in the Mediterranean has always been an inspiration of mine. I studied a lot of African history and a lot of Eastern history as well. So tracing my personal root, my Italian roots from Umbria to, in the last slides, Taiwan is an incredible journey of art history, mind space, and all of those wonderful things that are inspiring.
Yeah, beautiful. And, before we move to the next slide, is there anything particularly special about this piece that you want to share with us? It's gorgeous.
So this is an anthurium pendant, and the materials used are entirely sustainable. The white material is actually recycled bone, and historically bone has been used as a carving material when no other gem sources were available in the region. And the coral in this image is of the beautiful Pacific Momo, or perhaps Laurent can give us a genus and species, who knows?
Yeah, it's a little bit challenging, and I think we'll get to that later on to kind of visually identify what is the species. And that's really the beauty of corals, is that we have thousands of different species of corals, but only a few species that can be considered precious corals.
Yes.
They're considered precious. I mean, all corals are precious. We should be protecting them, and we should consider them to be precious. But the reason we use the term precious is that they are the only types of corals or species of corals that can be worked into jewelry or into objects. And so in total, that's between 8 and 10 different species. So it really is, out of the thousands of coral species that we have available, it really is a minute amount. And up until the 19th century, it was actually only in the Mediterranean that you could find precious corals. So Marco Polo back in the 13th century was also already trading corals all the way to Tibet. But this was Mediterranean coral, and the same thing goes for precious corals that were found in the southwestern US that were used by local populations. So after the Spanish arrived, but also West Africa, where in Nigeria and Benin, there's this really rich history of using coral. All this came from the Mediterranean. So it's certainly one of the earlier kind of luxury products that were traded internationally. And what you see here in the picture is actually this is a photo I took in a museum that I visited in southern Taiwan. And here you can see it's about, I would say, maybe a foot long, a foot and a half long, so about 50 centimeters long. And it really is the branch, the coral branch. So artists, this was fished. It's Asian coral. It's not Mediterranean coral. And it's maybe a little bit difficult to see from the image, but it was intricately carved over hundreds, if not thousands of hours. These are scenes of kind of village life or life in general. And there really are artisans that are specialized in this in Japan, Taiwan, and mainland China that specialize in this. So here, what are they trying to do? They're somehow connecting, which is probably something that Katey also tries to do in her work, connecting with the material itself. It's not just orange material. There's really a specificity to this material. And the artisan carver is going to work along that branch and try to work with it. And every branch is absolutely unique. And that's what really makes this material so unique.
So it's fascinating. So essentially what you're saying is that each region has their own distinct way of working with the coral.
Yeah, they work with the coral in the way that the coral has been, is present. So every species is going to be different size-wise, but also color-wise, color distribution-wise, how you can work it. And they really adapt to that. So that's what's interesting. In terms of kind of working, it really is Torre del Greco in near Naples that is very specialized in this. and then also Japan, Taiwan, and mainland China. So it's not like there are thousands of different regions in the world, where people fish and then work this coral. So it really is a specialist skill, but it's very, very interesting to see and to visit.
Yeah. And Katey, so do you work with coral from a specific region, and I believe that I know you spent quite a bit of time in Sicily, but can you share a little bit about how you like is what you use sort of specific to a region, and this is an image from the last collection, correct?
Yeah, this continuing the same collection, Il Sangue. And I have to give a chapeau to the artisans and craftspeople of Torre del Greco, because the history of carving, as Laurent mentioned, is really fascinating to myself as a jeweler, to implement the different species of coral from raw and refined to create pieces that people can wear from day to evening in a retail spectrum. One thing I love about the Tibetans' perception of coral is that spiritually, the gem comes to you as the artist, not the other way around. So I have worked with different dealers across the world, and always with the sentiment that the gem will come to me, because my intention is to honor the gem as nature has created it. So in this slide, it's a play on the blood orange of Sicily, where I lived, and the harmony of nature, and be it raw or refined, and both, essentially.
Yeah. Can you speak a little bit about Torre del Greco? Because I know that it's a place that, for a lot of individuals, when we think about coral and when we think about cameos, that's for the jewelry industry, that's the place where, all of these beautiful pieces come from, and that's where they're made. Can you give us a little bit of a sense of what it's like?
So I was there in June or July of this year. It's a special place historically at the foot of Mount Vesuvius. The history of the Greco-Roman culture and the trade of the Mediterranean of many civilizations is present. If you get a chance to go there, highly recommended. And the craftsmanship that dates back 800 plus years is passed down generationally, and we need to keep inspiring young people to become more involved in artisanal handcraft, because that is slowly going away, and we want to keep it alive. That's part of the lifeblood, is touching and feeling and carnal.
Yeah. It's definitely a place that I look forward to visiting one day. So my next question is to you, Laurent. So with advances in DNA fingerprinting, you recently uncovered a new coral species and re-examined old ones. How is this changing our knowledge of precious corals, which you touched upon a little bit already?
Yeah, so as maybe some of the audience have heard or are familiar with, some coral species are listed by CITES, which is the Convention on the International Trade of Endangered Species. So it's absolutely not forbidden to trade in them, but for certain species, you need a certificate that basically shows you from which country was this material exported. And so that's not an issue. The challenge is that not all precious coral species are listed by CITES, and this has been in place since 2008, when China requested Appendix 3 listing for certain species. So part of the issue, or part of the reason why we as scientists, and I work for a Swiss foundation called SSCF, where We're a foundation for the research of gemstones. So we work with dealers, but also with customs and brands. And part of the challenge sometimes is that when you have a precious coral species, you may be able to visually describe it. As for example, here with the color, we might say that it's a so-called angel skin color, which is a highly appreciated color in precious corals, a material that comes from Japan, Taiwan, the Pacific, of Pleurocorallium elatius is the Latin name for it. So that's something that we might say, okay, it looks like it, and that's it. But over the last 10 years, we've actually developed it's very slightly destructive. So we need to just take a tiny bit of sample material. We can we can take sample material out of a drill hole, for example, on these beads, on these precious coral beads, and we can extract a little bit of that material. And then, because even though it's calcium carbonate, it was still formed by living organisms, these polyps, there are minute traces of DNA left. And so we're able to then identify what is the species of that coral and to do so conclusively. And this was a really interesting necklace because it was a highly valuable necklace that a client had submitted to us. And they were interested in having more provenance information on what was the species. And so we did the DNA testing on it. And surprisingly, it didn't come out as elatius, which is the typical angel skin species that is known from Asia. And we didn't have it in our DNA database, in the reference database, and we couldn't find it anywhere else either. And so with my colleagues at the University of Zurich who were specialized in this, we kind of went down the rabbit hole. And it turns out that it's actually a new species. So new species in the sense that it's never been described as having been used in the jewelry industry before. And this just shows, it just adds layers of complexity. So it's not to take away from the artistic potential that there is in working with corals, but it was fascinating for us as scientists also, because we are curious people, to discover a new species and to say, well, this species, which was probably found off Vietnam, there's a Japanese scientist who fished some material there quite a few years ago. We were able to retrieve some reference samples and show that it is a very unknown species in the coral world and a new species in the precious coral world. And so you never stop learning. And that really is apologies for this cough. That really is it was such a nice surprise to get that. And then the next challenge was to say, oh, okay, we've got this new species. Could we try and get some reference material? And it's actually really hard. So it was probably a pocket of coral that had been fished that gave us maybe a few cabochons and this necklace. And that's it. Maybe more will come, maybe more won't come. We don't know. But we've just added one to the list. So that makes it all the more interesting.
This is so fascinating. I mean, essentially, it's like you've uncovered a jewelry mystery. I mean, this is really.
It's a mystery in one way. I think a mystery in the trade, it's not so much because people would be comfortable handling this as angel skin material. It just shows you that with modern scientific methods, there's so much we can still learn. And it's like 23andMe or whatever. You can learn more about humans and how we've traveled, how we've traded. So one of the things I'm particularly interested in is doing more research on historical coral jewelry pieces and doing two things. One is DNA fingerprinting. And the other thing that we're able to do is age dating. So we can use carbon-14 dating on corals because they contain carbon. And we can then, decipher what was the age of formation of that coral piece. And so that's also interesting. Katey mentioned Egypt. The Egyptians were already using corals. If somebody says that it's an ancient Egyptian piece of coral that was used in jewelry with carbon-14 dating, we can confirm that or disprove that. So it's interesting. And there's been some surprises in that regard. So yeah, it's been a detective work.
Yeah, and I mean, kind of unexpectedly, right? It all started from the swan necklace.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Katey, what about for you? I mean, I know that sustainability and, as we mentioned, sort of working with these materials from earth, sea, and space, that has always really been what has driven your creative output. What does this sort of mean for you, or does it mean anything? Or like, does this excite you, like discoveries like this?
Absolutely. And when I look at that strand, it's delicious and I want to know more about it. And I diligently read the CITES material as well as CIBJO and ICA, and try and keep up to date on everything that's going on in the industry regarding new discovery, because really jewelry is so fascinating, jewelry history, because it doesn't biodegrade and it leaves a fingerprint, as Laurent said, in the history of mankind, of how we have adorned and expressed ourselves over the passage of, I think the earliest necklace found is 130,000 years old. I mean, that little sentence is fascinating. So we're attracted to jewelry since, the earliest human DNA has existed.
Yeah.
So I'd be curious, Katey. I mean, what does coral represent or symbolize for you, or for the people who purchase precious coral jewelry from you? What do you think it? I mean, jewelry is different things for different people, but do you have an answer to that?
Of course. I mean, the name of the collection, Il Sangue, is meant to, in my artistic interpretation, to be the great unifier, the common blood that we all share of all humanity, and the bringing together of learning and discovery and curiosity, and asking questions from a scientific and an artistic standpoint, to see different perspectives and to travel that Silk Route of discovery, if you will, in the modern era. So when we can work together, like in this talk today, and see a perspective of science and of art and how they can build a program for learning more, I think that is how we go forward in the future.
Yeah.
Without prejudgment, with allowance for experiment.
Yeah. You so this is an image that you shared with me, Katey, and when you and I met, we also talked about preciousness, and that's something you also brought up, Laurent. That these materials, because they are so rare, there's this extra sort of added layer of preciousness. Can you sort of speak to that as well a little bit, Katey? Because I loved your perspective on it.
So for me, precious is both raw and refined. It's not about a monetary value. That's part of a bigger picture. And for me to convey this to retailers and collectors and museums, etc., is an opportunity for an artist to express oneself with a simple, piece, in this case, a piece of granite juxtaposed with a magnificent angel skin coral strand, and see the gifts of the earth from different sort of undulations of beauty.
Yeah. And Laurent, now that you sort of discovered, not sort of, but as you've discovered this new species of coral, does that change the value of that necklace that was brought to you?
Not necessarily, because the new species is not that well known. So I think it will still be appreciated for the properties that it has, the colors that it has, the hardness of the material. But I think it's more in the sense, that it's interesting for the final consumer to have more information about what they're purchasing. Just like if there was historic provenance, if it was royalty that was linked to it, or had Elizabeth Taylor owned it, or I just feel like there's really this evolution where before consumers in jewelry were less interested in not just the sustainability angle, but just learning like art, that people want more connoisseurship. They want to be more connoisseurs. They want to be more involved in the material and the process, learn more about the designers. And I think it's just in that kind of spirit that I see science kind of contributing to that movement as well. That we can all be educated consumers, and that makes us also more responsible consumers if we really understand the material, if we can cherish it properly, if we can tell stories about it, and if it's not just generically marketed as rare or precious or valuable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And Katey, I know that responsibility is very important to you as well. I mean, you're sort of you're one of the leading jewelers in the sustainability space. So what is that? What does that responsibility mean for you?
And to take my actions in the creative space and by supplementing it with all of the scientific information that I can gather, all of the historical information I can gather, and then to as a gift giver, essentially, that's what artists are, giving the gift of creativity, to give that to the wearer is my job, sort of to transfer the stone that came to me, as an artist, and for me to honor the stone, honor the earth, honor the space, and then to give that gift to the consumer. So, the more education that all of humanity can absorb uh, uh, is very important, especially the uh, from experts. And I think that's an important um, sentence, because there's a lot of misinformation. So when dealing with SSEF or myself, we are going to the expert level of information gathering and still discovering new things, which is super exciting. Like the new material for me is amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean it's incredible because your role, Katey, isn't just as a creative but also as an educator, because you serve as for your clients who come to you, and whether they're bringing an heirloom piece or you're creating an heirloom for them, you really are sort of that conduit for conversation. So it's an incredible role. Is there anything you want to tell us about this necklace before we move on to the next slide?
This specific coral, angel skin, paired with Sleeping Beauty turquoise, Junda opal, which opal is from an ancient sea. And for me, it's just an expression of joy.
Yeah, beautiful. I love the combination of the colors too. It's just really magical.
This one's quite feminine, but I also do pieces that are really, uh, strong in a different way. So
Yeah,
it's up to
yeah.
how the consumer wants to portray his or herself in how they adorn, and self-expression, which is so fun.
Yeah. Strong is a great word. I was thinking of that as well, thinking about your most recent collection, because the colors are so strong and powerful. And I think that's sort of part of the message of what you're both saying, is that these materials hold so much power and history. And to sort of now be able to carry that forward when you're placing these pieces in your body, it's very special. Um, so here, I just wanted to, talk about, and this is something that you mentioned, Laurent. Given the abundance of myths and online misinformation about coral types and conservation status, what can sciences do to help designers and consumers make informed decisions? Because, like we just said, Katey, of course, is she's educating, her clients, her collectors when they come to her. So, how can scientists help designers and artists?
Well, I think part of the challenge is kind of the online space, and we live also in such a polarized world right now, not just in the US but elsewhere as well. And something like coral can be a little bit complex. Some people and some companies have decided to absolutely not source or use any more precious coral. They've just said corals have to stay in the sea and that's it. Others, choose to say, and as we're discussing here, that let's use it responsibly, let's source it responsibly, let's cherish it. It's already here. There's a lot of old stocks also left in Torre del Greco, so it's material that's already been fished. Humans have had a connection with corals for thousands of years. There's clearly, a link, a relationship that is continuing to evolve. So let's cherish the material, and all that to say that I think we just need to give the information, independent information, trustworthy information to consumers, and then people can make up their own mind. I mean, I work a lot with pearls also. There's some people who are vegan, or who are in PETA, or there's people in India also, giants who don't touch oysters or pearls. I think that's a personal decision, and I'm totally okay with that. I'm not going to say oysters don't get harmed when when pearls are grown or harvested. And same thing for coral. I would say, well, listen, yeah, coral, climate change is an issue. Ocean acidification is an issue. We have these corals. We can cherish them. We can make beautiful jewelry out of it that is rare. We're not mass producing things, and we're really cherishing the material and the heritage and the story. And I think that's part of the hard conversation that also is part of that. So there is CITES, there is research showing that climate change is not ideal. The oceans aren't doing great, and yet we're still here. And so I think we really have this mandate, both as scientists but also people in the jewelry industry, to say the world's not perfect, but we're all trying to play our part in that. And I think key is that consumers just have access to information that is not saying, "Oh, this is good or this is bad." Let them make up their own minds.
And can you just also talk a little bit about the lab? So can anyone come to you, or is it just this has to be just a designer, or just a student, or how accessible are you, and can people just reach out and drop off their their jewels?
Yeah, they can. I mean, the thing is with the DNA fingerprinting, that's very complex and quite expensive testing. So it's not to say that we should be doing this for every single piece of coral. If, Katie is going to Torre del Greco and buying from reputable suppliers who've been doing this for multiple generations, that is also already a very good way of sourcing precious corals. So I think we have kind of two angles as a lab, or two missions. One is to do fundamental research, as we've been doing on this necklace and this new species, and the other is to teach courses and to just test material. There's also a lot of treated coral out there, or coral imitations out there. Consumers just deserve to know what they're buying. And that's where I think also gemological labs, but also industry organizations, for example, CIBJO, the World Jewelry Confederation, like Katie already mentioned. I'm part of the Coral Commission there. We just had our Congress in Paris. The CIBJO Coral Commission is very active. There's a guide on the website that can be downloaded that has a lot of pictures, a lot of information that really tries to give people access in simple ways to this trustworthy information. So I think education is absolutely key, not just in corals, but just in jewelry in general.
Yeah, I agree with you, and we've spoken about that quite a bit as well. Um, And so here we have this, incredible brooch as our last slide. Katey, can you talk a little bit about, what it means to work with these kinds of materials and craftsmanship, and, uh, what when it comes to working with coral, but even other sort of materials that you work with?
This piece is a magnificent representation of the craftspeople of Torre del Greco, and I have to give absolute credit to their carvers for creating just something that I see as sensuous. And my only participation in this piece truly was to, in my mind, minimize any extraneous overage. So it was a message of simplicity in some ways, even though it's a massive piece of coral, this size. So how do you make that from minimal in a sense? It was a balance. So
And what is the piece? Is it a ring, a necklace, an object?
it's actually a corsage.
Bangle?
It's
Okay.
a bracelet. So I wanted it to be representational of floral history as well. And the beauty of wearing a corsage on one's hand to an event is just so elegant and simple. So essentially, this piece is raw and refined. It's maximal and it's minimal. It's, a creation of a balance in my twig collection, which is a tree stripped of its leaves, standing strong in the face of a storm, meeting this gorgeous rose. So that's what I try and parlay to the consumer, is the poetry of wearing a piece of magnificent jewelry. The wearer becomes the art form and the canvas, and it's really a beautiful way to message both the history, the science, the spirituality, the art of each of us being a beautiful canvas.
Yeah. I think what's so interesting about this image, the material, you see that the color is not perfectly homogeneous, which is very typical of this Pacific type coral. And so it's really a unique piece. So unlike diamonds, where people want, a D color or an F color, and it's got to be flawless and homogeneous, here the craftsmen, when they're working this material, they don't know what kind of layers and what kind of color heterogeneities are going to pop up, and that's where this artistic side comes into it. And that's quite uncommon also in the jewelry industry, to say, well, we're going to work with something that's perhaps not what most people think perfection looks like. So I think it's also quite bold to work with coral and to just say, this is a product of nature, this is what it comes like, and that's it. And the other thing which I find really interesting about coral is, if you travel to Italy, you realize that, unlike, for example, diamonds that were mostly used just for jewelry, coral's everywhere in churches, in objects, in works of art. There's people using coral, splinters in paintings and whatnot. It's as much in art as it is in jewelry, and this is because of the nature of the material. So it really does have a special place in the jewelry industry, which is not like diamonds or rubies or emeralds. It's just different.
Yeah. I know, I mean, and absolutely here, I mean, it looks like so lifelike, like you're looking at an actual rose, because the colors are so incredibly, matched. And so it's, it's a beautiful way to use the material.
How do you choose the material? Do you know what the outcome is going to be? I mean, here, did you have what was the original material before it was turned into a rose? Did you pick it? Does the design come before? Does it come after? How do you interact with this surprise that you get with coral pieces, because you don't really know what you're going to get in the end?
Which is so exciting. It's the great exploration of life. It's like I said, I feel like the gems come to me when they arrive. I just try and honor who they are, and express their own personalities however they speak to me. And it may be a silent conversation, but those are some of the most cherished conversations I have, in the sense of honoring Mother Nature in general.
Hmm.
So every stone is different. Every stone has a different personality in my, and I just try and bring it out.
Hmm. And how has precious coral been received, or how has it, been received, this new collection by your clients? What is people, because I'm in a lab, I'm a scientist, but I'm not interacting a lot with kind of end clients. What is their reaction to it, this
So,
material?
you know, since it has such a long history, people are familiar with it.
Mm,
However, there is misinformation that needs to be better expressed.
mhm,
And it's important to note that there's only 8 to 10 types of precious coral, that it's not the 7,500 plus other types. We're only talking about a small category and a small, for us, it's small batch production and a lot of one of a kind pieces. So the end consumer wants to learn more. Um, they want to discover the journey of the gemstone in general, whatever the gem may be, and
mm.
understand, where does this come from? You know, what is the route essentially of mine to market, and how much information do you have on the origin of the stone as well as the execution of the final product.
Mm.
It's a
Yes.
long journey. Much
Mm.
is needed. So again, education, 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 and also um, the allowance for new discovery to be made is a good thing.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, I think one of the things I very much look forward to returning to Torre del Greco and speaking with people like Enzo Liverino, who's also on the Coral Commission with me within SIBJO, and he's actually been organizing together with Rui Galopim de Carvalho, who was on another choral talk, I think, that New York City Jewelry Week hosted last year or 2 years ago. They organize trips to Torre del Greco for people who want to visit and then engage with the artisans and the craftsmen and whatnot. And I think that is also an important part of jewelry, is that people can travel and can see things for themselves. So I'd invite anybody who's watching this and interested in learning more to visit Torre del Greco, because they've got beautiful coral and also very good pizza. So it's worth visiting, and good wine. Yeah. Mm,
Yeah, all of the above.
mm.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so very much for this conversation. I know that I learned a ton. So I thank you both for your time and your contribution, um, to this field, because it is immense. So with that, thank you both. And if anyone who's watching has any questions for either one of our panelists, even though it's a recorded program, you are welcome to send questions to both Dr. Laurent Cartier and Katey Brunini, either via our chat on YouTube that we'll be able to share with them, or I'm sure you can reach out to them directly, perhaps via Instagram or through their respective website. So thank you all so much for joining us for this conversation. And thank you both.
Thank you, Bella. Thank you, Katie.